I spent a long time thinking that people who knew what they wanted from the start had won something, and I just hadn't achieved that yet. That I was the one who was confused, that I was the one that was behind. But the more and more that I grow and develop and mature, I start to realize that this isn't true, that you can be ambitious and confused at the same time. Welcome back to Clearly Becoming, a podcast that aims to support and empower ambitious individuals by providing some evidence backed insights and also just having honest conversations as we all navigate this chaotic career journey together. And that is exactly why I wanted to bring my guest on today. And her name is Ashley Spiliapulu. And she has worked from PR at Emerge, who represented Red Bull, Dyson, Third Space, to a freelance journalist who has written and published in Marie Claire, Days, Stylist, Condé Nast, all of those big media outlets. And she's also co-founded London's most inclusive running club called Sunny's Run Club, and recently has founded a business called Solo, which enables people to network professionally and personally. And on paper, this looks scattered. It's a lot of things going on, a lot of interests, a lot of occupations, and things like that. But in practice, it looks like it's somebody who has refused to stay stuck in one thing. It's somebody that wants to expand and have and do all of the multiple interests that many of us have. And this is proof that you don't have to stick to one thing. You can have multiple interests, multiple passions, and do them all. And I think that is something that I want to talk about in this conversation, is the non-linear path. And so without further ado, I'm going to welcome Ash to the podcast. Thank you so much for doing this. I really
Of
appreciate it.
course. No, I'm excited. It would be good.
First go into, I think a lot of people, especially going into university and just starting out their careers, is like they think they have to pick this one thing, this one passion that they have to decide on. And it's a lot of pressure to choose that one thing, especially at a young age. And we're meant to choose it at 18, 17, whatever age it is. And that's a lot of pressure. And I feel like this is where you come in, and just you have so many different passions. Your career has a non-linear path. You've done
Mm.
PR, founded multiple businesses. It's just you're a freelancer. And I was wondering, like, how did you decide to do all of these things and just go for it?
Yeah, even though we're moving away from this very linear path of, oh, you have to choose a career and stick with it for the whole of your life, I think that kind of stereotype still lingers because especially our parents still had it. We were kind of brought up with it through school. So even though we're sort of like tension point trying to move away from it, it's still like we feel it in our bones and it makes us anxious as the idea of kind of job hopping or popping around. I think I've always felt quite multifaceted as a person. I used to be an athlete and I did heptathlon, which is 7 different track and field events. And I think it was very much like I never wanted to pick one because I loved all of it and I wanted to try everything. And I'm very much that person that wants to kind of jump into all different aspects of who I am. And I think the more that I did sort of expand and try different things, the more confidence that you kind of gain. So I can't say that it was ever something that I just had in me that I was like, right, I'm going to be this person that does all these different things. It's just sort of evolved. And as I've done it, I've been like, oh, all that stuff that people said to me about how you can't hop around, you can't try different things, hasn't really checked out as true. So
Mm.
I guess it's kind of been through experience that I've then gained the confidence to be like, nothing bad happens when you do something different, like when you go against the grain. And actually, it's really exciting when you do that. And then people start giving you positive feedback and they're like, oh my God, you did that? And then you're like, yeah. And then it kind of builds and builds and builds. So I don't ever think it's something that was innately in me. I don't think I'm a particularly like massively confident person or, it wasn't something I was born with, let's say. It's just kind of been a thing that I've discovered in myself.
Yeah, yeah. And when you were initially like at 17 or 18, did you
Mm.
have somewhere that you wanted to go, or did you kind of start out just with being at a path?
Do you know what I think? That was my sole focus. Like anyone that's done sport or had any kind of particular passion at a young age that kind of sits outside the norm, I think they would relate to the fact that it consumes your entire identity. Like my purpose for existing was to go to the Olympics one day. I was like, that's all I care about. That's all I am. I trained 40 hours a week for it. I chose my university because of it. So I ended up studying psychology, but sort of actually I was going to go to King's and do history and international relations. But then because of sport, I was like, I need to go to Loughborough, and the course at Loughborough is better if I do psychology. So all of everything else was peripheral noise around I want to be a heptathlete. At 17, 18, even though I had all of these other passions around writing, creativity, design, social media, like all of that creative side of me was just parked. It was just peripheral noise. And I was like, the only thing that matters is sport. So then I guess I sort of had this delayed sense of like existential crisis that a lot of people get at like 17, 18. I sort of got that at 22 when I decided to stop sport because of injury and various things. And that's when I hit my crux moment of like, who am I? And I think people get that a lot at like 17, 18, but I just had it a little bit later. And that's where I started really exploring all the other sides of me. And that's how I came to end up in PR first, which came about because truly I knew that I loved writing and expressing myself through writing, but I'm also just generally quite a creative person. I had some experience doing social media as like a side hustle in the sporting world, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed art, like creativity, travel, and I was kind of like, maybe PR sort of encapsulates all of those things because I didn't have a degree in journalism. So I was like, well, I don't know how to be a journalist. Like, how do I even get into that industry?
Mhm.
And so I got an internship in PR because it felt like sort of the right thing, ilk. And then I just sort of like scaffolded my way up, like almost like snakes and ladders from there to get to where I am now, which is where I want to be, you know?
Absolutely. And I think one of the common misconceptions is that we can't do something if we don't have experience. And it's like the catch 22 of like, oh, I need to get a job in order to break into this industry, but I don't have enough of the credentials to do that. So how did you step into doing PR and
Mm.
even without having any degree in it?
Yes, truly. And I think that's a question that I get all the time is people are like, I would love to do that, but I don't have any experience. And they feel, like you say, chicken and egg stuck in that point of I've got no experience. To get into PR, I took an internship. Fortunately, it was a paid internship. So I did start right at the bottom of the rung. That was probably the most traditional element of career path that I chose. And I do think it was so worthwhile because going into PR built a huge level of confidence in me. It gave me so many media contacts that I could then use to kind of like figure it out and get to journalism. But what I would say is, even when I was in PR, like I had no experience in journalism and I just sort of shot my shot. And I think it's that very sporting mentality of you can advocate for yourself and you can find experience in places that you haven't got experience in the job. Like I'd never been a journalist, but you know, I will work so hard. I've got all this background from sport. I've proven that I can be disciplined. I've proven that I can like be really diligent. I can, you know, meet deadlines. And it's kind of like amping up your skill set where you don't have traditional job experience. I'm not saying that's easy, but I think putting yourself out there, meeting as many people as you can and advocating for yourself, which feels unnatural for a lot of women. Like we're much more kind of ready to take a back seat, whereas men will stand in a room and be like, this is how good I am at all of these things. And I know so many men that have gone in at higher level jobs than they're qualified for because they're like, I'm good enough. I'm going to advocate for myself. And people believe them because when you say something with enough oomph, people believe you. So I think that is definitely kind of area that educate yourself and make sure that you do have the knowledge and the tenacity to back up what your claims are, but also like state your case. And I think that's been the biggest learning curve for me is like, if you're a shrinking violet, people will let you be a shrinking violet. And equally, if you allow yourself to be big, you can get places that you didn't necessarily know you could get to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I just learned about this recently in an article about the power of talk, and it talks
Mm,
exactly about the gender differences and how men just like play this game. It's where they have to one up each other, and that's how they communicate. But as women, instead, we shrink ourselves. We don't want to sound too big or too good or too ambitious or whatever it is because of fear of not fitting in. And it's that whole dynamic. And so learning to play the game in a sense and know who you're targeting and who you're with in order to do what you want.
exactly. And I think it's such a tough one for us to navigate because like you say, like social norms dictate that like women want to kind of relate to people and that's so important too. And like there's still so many occasions where people will say to me like, this is so cool that you've done that, and I almost minimize it because I'm like,
Yeah.
oh no, like I want them to feel okay. I don't want to feel like I'm showing off or anything like that. But I think, you don't have to be the big, like, masculine macho way. But I think it's just having some kind of confidence in yourself, I think, and just
Hmm.
sort of like being able to say thank you without saying, oh no. And that, like, that element, it's just bridging the gap a little bit, which I think is so important for women and isn't to be sniffed at because it's something that's hard.
I think building confidence is really rooted from a sense of self and growing
Mm.
that and understanding what your values are and who you are as a person, which is hard to figure out. And it's a continuous journey of just learning about who you are and continually evolving with it.
And I saw a like really lovely Instagram post that I think you put up of like you kind of can't wait to believe in yourself. And I think that's been very true for me is for so long I was just like, oh, I just want to be confident. I want to be this, I want to be that. And it was just like not happening. And I was like, how do people do that? And in the end, I sort of had to create a bit of an alter ego for myself and that classic fake it till you make it. But I really think that's kind of a cliched saying, but if you can really embody it of like build yourself a person who represents everything that you want to be. And when you go into an environment that scares you, be that person, because being yourself in an environment that scares you if you don't feel confident is just like impossible and crippling, and you're just like, oh my god, like everyone's going to know that I am not this confident person. Whereas if you're like, well, okay, but I'm playing this character for now, that person is, and it's almost like being in a play, and then the more you do it, the more that you and that person start to merge. That's definitely what I've noticed, is the sort of gap between the person I was performing and the person I was have closed, because ultimately they are the same person. It's just the best, most outgoing version of you versus the shy, insecure version of you, and you're just bringing them together.
The belief comes when you see it happen. And in
Mhm.
order to see it
Mhm.
happen, you have to do the actions of that person that you want to become and
Mhm.
things like that.
Yeah.
And I saw recently on an article somebody had written about you. It was like you tailored your CV towards
Mm.
the company. So the PR company that you work at, Emerge.
Mm.
And I looked at it and it was literally, you used all the fonts, the branding, the way they talk, the way they interact. And that is how you create action and then form that belief with it, is that you
Mhm.
merge that gap between maybe I haven't worked that much, but this is the energy that I can bring. This is who I
Mhm.
can be. This is the value I can add to your company. And so, how did you have that idea?
I think I've always been like a really high effort person, and like I like to hustle, and I like when I get an idea I like hook to it and I have to do it
Mm.
immediately. So I remember I had that idea on a Saturday morning, and by the Saturday lunchtime I'd done it and sent it, because I just sort of, in the impulsive moment, I'm like, this is the right thing to do, this is what I need to do. Also, I mean, it's not reinventing the wheel. I think there's definitely been other people that have done it before me, for sure. But I think it's just, I think it's quite actually like a classic piece of job advice is, we see it so much now of people, they just blast off a chat GPT or a generic CV to hundreds of companies. And even if it's like stating their experience, it's so impersonal. I get emails all the time now as a journalist that are like so clearly like blanket BCC'd emails. And I understand that people are busy, but human to human connection, and I think having studied psychology, I understand that people connect with people. Like,
Mhm.
people resonate with energy. You can't teach effort. You can teach skills, you can teach all of those things, but you cannot teach attitude and you can't teach energy. And I think, maybe that's a product of my psychology degree, maybe it's also a product of sport. I was never the most talented person out there in that field, but I was always the one that was going to work the hardest, and I saw results as a result of that. So I think it's just a mindset thing of like, well, you've got a deficit on whether it's work experience, whether it's talent, whatever it is. You can't necessarily overtake talent, but you can close the gap. So I think it's just thinking outside the box, doing everything you can. That's a kind of a life philosophy that you just have to adopt in everything. And that's how you get those ideas.
Do you think, I think you mentioned that you're kind of innately ambitious and you put
Mm,
in the effort, but do you think it can be learned?
that's a good question. That's a good question. I think ambition is in you or it's not.
Mm.
That being said, I think life experiences can stunt ambition and teach you that you maybe don't deserve to be ambitious, or you're not good enough, or all of these things. So I think that maybe it's an innate trait, but I think that a lot of people might think they don't have it, but actually they do have it. It's just that it's been kind of like silenced by the fact that they have lost confidence, or they've been taught to be the quiet good girl, or not to ask
Mm.
for too much, or all of those things which are culturally learnt. So I think if you heard me say I think it's in you and you think it's not in me, I would say the fact that you're listening to this podcast and relating to it in some way means it's probably in you. You maybe just don't have access to it yet, would be my kind of take on that.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think just societal pressures have definitely minimized that. And sometimes being ambitious can be scary. It takes sacrifice. And
Hmm.
I also think there's a common misconception that you have to know what you want in order to be ambitious. But I think the point of this whole podcast is that you can have so many interests, you can be confused, you can be not where you want to be, and yet you can still be ambitious and you can put in the hard work and the effort.
Absolutely. And I think actually undirected ambition is one of the most confusing and sometimes overstimulating things, because then actually it can make you feel entirely unambitious. Like sometimes when I have felt lost or undirected, it's almost like a fizzing in me where I'm like restless, but I'm also exhausted and kind of feel like being lazy. And like I'd say I'm a very ambitious person, but there are days when I just don't want to do anything because I almost feel paralyzed by my ambition. Like it's like I want to be all of these things. I want to write a book. I want to start this. I want to start that. And it all feels too much. So I'm like, I should do none of it. But actually, that's not fulfilling either. So yes, I think ambition doesn't necessarily mean you know what you want. It just means you know you want something. You want life to
Yeah.
be more, I guess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's typical for people to go into this concept of identity foreclosure. It's like they want to close themselves off just to have that sense of security and stability. And it's normally coming from an external source. But really, it's so important to explore who you are and to have multiple interests. I think that's what's so great about right now in this career landscape is that you can do so many things.
Yeah.
And you don't have to stick to that traditional career that you have to be in for 40 plus years, especially if it doesn't make you happy.
Totally. Totally. And I think actually you'll be so much happier when your identity isn't tied to whatever thing like necessarily that one thing you're ambitious in. Like, for example, sport half killed me, I tell you what, because like as much as I loved it, like it was everything. So then when I
Mhm.
lost it or I didn't do well, it crushed me and I felt like a bad person. Whereas now, because I have so many different areas of interest, like I adore being a journalist, fills me up so much, but it isn't who I am. I don't like, I'm not defined by whether I get commissioned or whether I achieve, whether I write a feature that people connect with. I hope I do, but at the same time, I'm not going to die if it doesn't like pay off. I think it's really important. It's healthy to have that kind of diversified interest.
I absolutely agree with that. I think when you tie yourself to one thing, exactly what you said, when you make a mistake or something happens, it feels like everything is ending. But because you have so many different sources of who you are, and I like to think of it as a pie chart of your life. It's like you have your careers, you have your hobbies, your interests, your relationships with friends, whatever, family, and all of those make up who you are and who you're becoming in a sense. And so I
Exactly.
guess I met you through the Sunny's Run Club,
Yeah.
and that was so great, and I loved it. And I love the philosophy that anybody can join. You can come at two speeds, it's inclusive. It also pushes you a little bit further than that regular 5K mark. And I guess, how did you have this idea to run, and what did you want your community to feel when they showed up?
Yeah, so a little background on Sunny Runners, which it was so nice that you came. Essentially, I run it with one of my best friends, Georgia, who is also a journalist. The idea for Sunny's kind of came about because both of us came to running from two very different ends of the spectrum. So I'd come from being an elite athlete who had walked away from the sport and kind of had to go completely cold turkey because it had hurt me so much that I hadn't achieved, always been in this very like performance driven environment. And then Georgia, who had never been a runner and then was running her first London Marathon for charity, she identified very much as a slow runner. It wasn't natural for her. And she'd gone to run clubs and felt completely excluded. There was no real like support system, no inclusivity. And they left her behind on a run in like a dark end of canal and Regent's Canal in London. And we were both just talking about how there seemed to be this lack of both like real community, like they were kind of false community. It was labeled as community, but you'd go and you wouldn't really feel this like deep level of connection. I'd gone to a few run clubs and kind of felt like it was promised that you'd make all these friends, and I was new to London and I kind of felt like actually everyone was just in a clique and wasn't really engaging, and it was kind of sad. And then there was also the element of every run club always runs 5K. And I was like, well, from my training background, no one improves by running the same distance every single time. Like, the way you improve is by being slightly pushed out of your comfort zone, but in a safe environment where you don't feel threatened, you don't feel like judged, pushed too hard, and you can kind of build confidence and internal trust like we were talking about earlier, and then you get better and better and better. So we wanted to create something that had more of like almost like a training program style, different distance every time, 2 different pace groups, so that people can improve and grow in a safe environment. But the crucial part of that is that the environment was really inclusive, really safe. If people wanted to come, not because they cared about running, but because they just wanted to make some friends because there's a loneliness epidemic, and they want to feel connected and all of those things, they have a place there. So I think ultimately the feeling that I want to create in everybody that arrives at Sunny's is that they are seen, welcome, and safe. London can feel so discombobulating, especially when you first move there. And also this period of our lives can just feel so discombobulating, and you can sometimes feel completely misunderstood, like no one relates to you, lost, all of those feelings. So I just kind of want for 2 hours every other Saturday for people to feel very much at home and like they could come and talk to me about anything, running or otherwise.
Yeah, and I definitely felt that when I came to Sunny's Run Club. I mean, everybody there is just so welcoming too. And the form of connection of that running has is it's not so much of the sport itself, but that it's you're able to talk to people. I mean, it's all about connection. And I think that's what I've realized more about sports in general is because I think the health industry and the wellness industry, it's so much on how you feel and how you look and things like that. But it's more of like, what is this community? How is this adding value to your life? And I think
Yeah.
community is that ultimate connector that we've seen in the pandemic of just we need this human connection. And
Oh
so
my
that's what
God.
it brings.
Yeah, for sure. I'm so glad you felt it. Have you had a background in sport? Like, what's your kind of,
I definitely haven't had a background in sport.
yeah.
I wish I could do sports. I mean, I think that's another sore point for me is that I look like I could be an athlete. I'm, tall, I have whatever, but I'm just so uncoordinated.
So have you never been a runner? You're new to running too?
I started running actually when I was going to go to New York this past summer to do an internship. And I thought, what a great way to explore the city than by running. And so I started to run and get on my feet. I downloaded the Nike Run Club app and I just was doing that around the block. And then I wanted to join a run club because sometimes when you're doing it on your own, it is motivating, but I feel like sometimes you need an extra inspiration and
Oh,
just
for sure.
a group to do it with and just to know that you're not alone and just
Yeah.
running. But
Well, you've got
yeah,
your group now.
yes, yeah. But I think another thing with that is when I say I'm not an athlete and things like that, when we create labels for ourselves, I think it becomes into like an identity. And so I really try to reframe in that sense of like, instead of saying I'm not an athlete or I'm not a runner, I'm becoming a runner or
Mm.
I'm becoming this one thing or whatever, so that it doesn't shut down it completely. Because you can do whatever you want as long as you have the mindset and effort like you talked about.
100%. I think, self-doubt was something that I struggled with so enormously in sport. And I worked with a sports psychologist, and that was the biggest game changer to me achieving the things that I achieved in my career. I've seen the like astronomical power of the mind, and it's almost unbelievable. You feel like it's like magic because you're like, how the hell have I not improved at all physiologically, yet I have my performance has improved so much because of the way I talk to myself. That is crazy to me, but it works. And for so long, similar to you, I didn't call myself a journalist for so long. I was like, I sometimes write. I'm a freelance writer. I do this, I do that. And then when I reframed that, I would introduce myself, I am a journalist. A, the way people respond and interact with you is so different. But B, you start to act and show up in the world with so much more confidence. And I mean, it's the basis of even manifesting, right? It's fully just you cognitively like playing with the brain's ability to change. Like our brain has the capacity to form new neurons and more pathways and all of that stuff. So it all comes down to self-talk, totally.
Yeah. And I know that you do a lot of collaborations as well with scales and honor screens that's coming up and things like that. When you have that confidence and when you state what you are, I think that's what makes an attractive way to reach out to people and get them to, collaborate. And so is that how you advocated for yourself when trying to team up with different restaurants, brands, people, or even hiring managers?
Yeah, for sure. I think I mean, by the time we started Sunnies, I think I had good experience in PR at that point, that I understood the pitching process. Like, having seen like myself do it for brands that I was representing and all of these things, I know how to roughly structure an email pitch to anybody. So that is a skill set that I won't kind of like shun, because I know that some people haven't learned that. So that is a process of just practicing how to send like a nice formal email that kind of says your credentials, what your value is. But aside from that, yes, it is literally just showing up and getting in their inbox, having a really strong elevator pitch. And I think, like you say, that comes from knowing your values, knowing who you are and what you stand for, and then understanding that if you reach out and they reject that, that's okay, because that just means that they didn't align with your values, and you wouldn't want to partner with them if they don't align with your values. And if they do resonate, then amazing. And we've seen an almost 100% success rate in that. And it honestly didn't take very long. That can kind of count a handful of emails that we've sent reaching out. And then before you know it, people are coming to you, because once they see it on social media, and this is kind of the catch-22 of social media, because obviously, yes, there's an element to which it's performative and people worry about that, but the beauty of it too is how discoverable it makes you. So you can connect with people who really resonate with you, whether it's people that are finding Sunnies because they want to come to Sunnies, or whether it's brands that are like, oh, that community aligns with us, we'll reach out to them. And that's how we get most of our collaborations now, is that people see what we stand for. Social media ultimately becomes your portfolio, which is why it's really important on your social media to show up in the way that feels true to you, rather than following the trend that you think is like resonating. Because the more you try and be something else online, the more you're going to attract the wrong interest and the wrong collaborations and all of that kind of thing. Put your vibe out consistently, and eventually the right people will find it.
What you said about rejection is so true. I think people need to be rejected more. And that might sound weird, but like I really do feel like it's just a natural thing. I mean, I've been rejected so many times,
Yeah,
in
same.
singing, in modeling. I mean, I
Oh,
think there's nothing as daunting as somebody just telling you no towards your looks that you can't change.
yeah,
And once you have that, I feel, and you don't need to obviously go through that to feel rejection, but I think something that's so eye-opening is that it's not you who they're rejecting, it's just that fit that they're rejecting. And so once you find something that aligns with you, you know it works and it feels good to you. And then you're able to collaborate together, because when you're being hired for a company or whatever, you need to make sure that you fit into that culture, or else you're equally not going to do your best for each other.
totally. I mean, I'm in awe of you being able to do it in the modeling industry. Like, that is tough, girl. That is hardcore. But I think you're absolutely spot on. I think I was so scared of rejection, so scared of it before you feel it, right? Because it's like a horrible feeling and you don't want it. And the best way to kind of sink into it is being like, I know this is going to hurt, but it's going to be survivable. And if I don't go for it, I'm being rejected either way, because I either definitely don't get what I want, or I shoot my shot and give myself a chance to get what I want. And as you say, when you can reframe the idea that it's your personal self that's being rejected, and realize that it's actually a marriage of the two, then it kind of doesn't feel so bad, because you're like, oh, this actually just wasn't the right thing for me. And the more no's I get, the closer I get to my yes, kind of thing.
And I think one thing that people might want to know about is how to pitch. And so you
Mm.
mentioned that you have like a pitch email, that elevator pitch. So how do you construct that in a practical way? So I decided to break this episode in two parts, just because I feel like part one is so rich and I want you to fully absorb that it's okay to have multiple interests. It's okay to not take the traditional path. You can have a non-linear career, and Ash is proof of that. I really want you to just absorb that you are free to explore and that you do not have to stay stagnant. But stay tuned for part two, because Ash has so much more valuable advice. She goes into how to pitch yourself, why friction maxing is important, and also the power of community in the loneliness epidemic. I'm so excited for you to hear part two, but really just soak in what part one has to say about that it's okay to have multiple interests and you can pursue them. Don't limit yourself to just one. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. Definitely comment below what you are exploring and learning at the moment. And I'll see you for part two. Bye.